Hello, I'm out here in the sukkah. As you see, it's not fully set up yet. We're hoping that the rain clears a bit. Who knows? But who could complain? In New York, it's pouring rain. And at the end of the day, that's the whole idea of the sukkah, is the vulnerability, recognizing that you can have the fanciest home, the most beautiful lodgings, but when you eat in the sukkah, you're very dependent on the weather and God. But one of the questions that the rabbis ask is why does Sukkot come right after Yom Kippur? What is the message with that sequence? Really, Sukkot should come after Passover. We left Egypt and then we sat in huts. There's a couple of ideas that I want to share with you, and it connects to one thing. Firstly, Yom Kippur is a special holiday. Because Yom Kippur we sit and show everyone together. We don't eat, we don't drink, and we try to lift ourselves above our materialism and focus on our soul, on our spirituality. And the rabbis tell us that when that happens, we recognize that when you look at the soul of another Jew, you see you're the same soul, you're the same family. And therefore, after you do that, you could come to the holiday of Sukkot. Because what is Sukkot? Sukkot is all about unity. We take the four species that represent four different Jews. We make a sukkah, and as the rabbis tell us, we can have the largest sukkah. There's no limit to the size of the width and the length of the sukkah, because all the Jews should be able to sit in one sukkah. The message of Sukkot is all about unity. And in fact, the rabbis tell us that one of the reasons that Sukkot comes after Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah is because, as King Solomon says in Shir HaShirim, what does he say? He says that the bride speaks about the embrace she gets from her husband. And she says he puts his left hand under my head, and with the right hand, he hugs me and he embraces me. And the rabbi says something interesting. There's many forms of love that you could share with someone. You could kiss them. You could gaze at them. You could say words towards them. But the love of an embrace is when you put your left hand under them and your right hand over their back, and you look over them. You're looking at their back, not at the front. That's unconditional love. Conditional love is when you gaze at someone. You love them for the reciprocity you get, for the love they share with you, for the care they give you. But what Sukkot represents is an embrace that's totally unconditional. God says, I love you for who you are. In fact, that's why the rabbis say the left hand under the head that King Solomon speaks about is really representative of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when it's left represents judgment and left represents restraint. It represents conditional love. What are you doing? How are you behaving? Are you kind? Are you pious? But when it comes to Sukkot, God says, "V'yamino techapkeni," the right hand will hug me. At that point, God's embracing us from the back, not looking necessarily at every detail of ours, but knowing that He loves us and showing us that embrace. And that's why, out of all the holidays, the Sukkah is the mitzvah that embraces the entire human being. The hands, when you give tzedakah, it's your hands. When you go to shul, it's your feet. When you light Shabbos candles, it's your hands. When you make a blessing, it's your mouth. But when you sit in the sukkah, your embrace is by the entire sukkah, surrounding every part of the human being. They say this remarkable story about the Baal Shem Tov. When he lived in Mezhebush, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Chassidic movement, he lived in Mezhebush in Ukraine. And according to Jewish law, a sukkah has to have four walls and a temporary roof. It can't be a full roof. It has to be able to have sun coming in. So that means if it rains, you got to be able to feel it. But it's interesting, when it comes to every mitzvah, people are so careful to get the nicest lulav and esrog, to have the most beautiful menorah, to have the most gorgeous Shabbos candles. Yet the rabbis tell us, when it comes to lulav and etrog, even though it needs to be a temporary hut, even if you have 3 walls, you don't need 4 walls. 3 walls is enough. And not only that, but the third wall could only be a small part of the wall. So really, 2 and a bit is enough. And one time, the Baal Shem Tov was in Mezhebush, and the Baal Shem Tov constructed his sukkah, and the sukkah of the Baal Shem Tov was so iffy that it was questionable if it was even kosher, because it only had 2 and a drop walls, and the way the separations were wasn't so sturdy, and the way the panels went. And the rabbis of Mezhebush ruled that the Baal Shem Tov sukkah is not kosher, and the Baal Shem Tov said it is kosher. And finally a miracle happened, and a note fell from heaven. The angel Matat threw down a note that said the sukkah is kosher. But the Rebbe, in one of his talks, asked a remarkable question. Why did the Baal Shem Tov have to rely on a sukkah that was so questionable that the rabbis in the town were unsure if it's kosher? Why couldn't he make a better sukkah, 4 sides, like we do with our with all the other mitzvot, with the lulav and the trog, etc., etc.? And the Rebbe says like this: the Baal Shem Tov was trying to make an important point. He was trying to validate all those sukkot that are questionable if they're kosher. What he was trying to say is that every single Jew, regardless of his level of observance, regardless how kosher, how many walls he has, how much detail he has, is kosher. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov chose to eat in a sukkah that was just kosher. To say that we have to welcome every single Jew. We have to embrace every single Jew. And we have to celebrate every single Jew. That's the story of Sukkot. God's giving us a big hug, an embrace. I love you. I care for you unconditionally. And that's why we celebrate with so much joy and so much happiness, because we recognize the blessing that we are able to have, that God loves us and embraces us unconditionally and celebrates with us with the big hug of Sukkot. Chag Sameach, and hope to see you around.